2, 3. Okay. Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We are going to start. This topic is, there are many things to say. I will try to summarize many ideas. I won't go into many details about these elements. And my idea to present this is not a sermon, my friends. It's some kind of class. And so don't worry, there won't be cold at the end. The idea is to invite you to consider some elements in history, archaeology, and also chronology, trying to understand the Bible from different perspectives. And that's the reason this is a presentation I hope can be a blessing for you and a source of reflection in your studies. And when you are reading the Bible, try to get you can be aware about the reality of those days. It's not only, as we say in the morning, are no tales. There are no nice stories. No, they were in a real world, in a special environment. And this is the idea of this study. I will ask Pastor Hutabarat that he can lead us in a word of prayer, please.
Let's pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, we thank you so much, O Lord, for this Sabbath day, O Lord. And now we are going to continue our colloquium, O Lord. And I pray especially for Dr. Mora, as he will present a very important topic for us to know. May you grant him blessing and anoint him with your Holy Spirit, O Lord, so that he can speak according to thy will and be a blessing for us, everyone. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. The idea of this afternoon is to consider some elements on chronology in the Bible, and especially the days of the judges. And when you are talking about the dates and how to put the dates in the Old Testament, the most important issue that will mark the rest of the Bible is the date of the Exodus. When was the Exodus? They are among the conservative scholars, those who accept that the Exodus was something real. There are two dates, two proposals. One is in the 13th century, and they have put two dates, in the 1270 or the 1224 BC. And the other proposal is the 15th century BC. It means 200 years, around 200 years of difference between these two dates. Have you watched the movie The Ten Commandments? It's an old movie, more than 50 years old, almost 60 years this year, actually. And they work with the idea of Ramses. Well, when they made this movie, they have the idea that was here during the 13th century BC. Why not this century? Well, maybe the main reasons are, we will see some dates that we will give later on to you in the Bible. It says that from the 4th year of Solomon, from the Exodus to the 4th year of Solomon is 480 years. So if we put here the Exodus here, it doesn't fix. It's too long. And maybe the other argument, well, the 300 years that Jephthah mentioned, later we'll read this passage. Jephthah mentioned 300 years. It doesn't fit if you put the Exodus here, because then it will bring 300 years around 970, and in the 10th century are the days of Jephthah, are the days of Solomon. So it's make a big problem in the chronology of the Bible. And the other strong argument, there are another arguments about Cantir, about Ramses, the city, and all these elements. But the other strong argument is a stela that was found of Merneptah. Merneptah was the son of Ramses II. And in this stela, they mention Israel, that he went to Palestine, he attacked, he tried to conquer Palestine, and he destroyed or he controlled Israel. It means that for those days, 2015, the day for this stela, Israel was already set. There was already established in Canaan. So if you put the Exodus here, and the Exodus were 40 years, is here, then you see it's no fix how to put Merneptah saying here that was the Israel was there already as a nation, and he mentioned this stela, my friends, is one of those few findings in archaeology that is a big issue for the critical scholars. They don't know how to explain this. They will give many arguments. So that is another move a little bit back during the years of Ramses, in order that can fix the 40 years to the 30, and then the stela here 15 years later. They try to arrange that element. But well, for these reasons, we don't go for this. Many scholars, Seventh-day Adventist scholars, the majority of them, and also evangelical scholars, go for the late date of the Exodus. It means during the 18th dynasty of Egypt. This is, well, these are the arguments for the late, in the 13th century. We won't go to those discussion of these details because there are many elements there, some findings that they try to support that was during this date. They say that this is one option is Ramses and his son Merneptah. Others say that is Seti the first and Ramses the second, and Ramses is the one in the Exodus. But as we say before, there's no many support for this. Even some scholars try to use this date. We are going more for the 15th century date. And in this century, we have some arguments. One of them are biblical arguments. The first one and most important is 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1. So I will request someone who can read 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1. And maybe if we can put this, I need this, Pastor Girgis, or if you can help me to put this here in front beside because this is biggest.
Here?
No, but don't cover the. So you see, the Bible says somebody has 1 Kings 6:1. Please read it.
In the 480th year, after the Israelites came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord.
This is the starting point of the construction of the temple of Solomon. He says that was in the 4th year. And according to the chronology, we know that 4th year is in 970 BC. So the Bible says that how many years, Pastor Hutabarat?
480th year.
480 years from where?
Came out of Israel, came out of
480 years from there to here.
Israelites came out of Egypt.
Yes, then when was the Exodus? You can take your calculator. Take this, only that this is minus because it's BC. Then if you add this, you have the Exodus here in the 15th century, around 1450s. In some books you will find 1446. But we won't be here very strict with dates. We know that there are sometimes some margin of error to consider these elements. So later we will see this in Judges chapter 11, verse 26. Remember Jephthah. And here this afternoon we will talk many numbers, so you should be aware. Don't fall asleep, because if you lose something, you will lose everything. Jephthah, remember the sermon, the speech he gave to the enemies, the Ammonites. And then the Ammonites came and they say no, but Jephthah, what Jephthah says in 11:26 in Judges. What did he say? Somebody can read this text, please. Judges 11:26.
For 300 years, Israel occupied Heshbon, Aroer, and the surrounding settlements, and all the towns along the Arnon. Why didn't you retake them during that time?
Yes, for 300 years. Later we will put this date. The issue here is that if we put the Exodus here, my friends, we don't have problem with the biblical chronology. If you set the Exodus in this place, there's no problem. You see that the days fix, the 300s fix very well. But if you put the Exodus here in around 1270, you see, we cannot put 480 years here, because will bring us to the 8th, 9th century, maybe the days of Ahab or the days of Elisha. Then you cannot fix the whole Bible history. This is maybe the main argument in favor of this, the Exodus here. But there are other arguments that we have. I will try to show you here. You see, you put the Exodus here in 1227. Jephthah in 927 is very late. This is the days almost of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. And Solomon's temple in 743, 430 days. Then you see it doesn't fix. We should use this chronology, the Exodus in a late date here in the 1450. That's the reason that we go for an early date of the Exodus. The 18th dynasty of Egypt is the New Kingdom period in the history of Egypt. And then we have here, as we see, Exodus. Thutmose III was the pharaoh of the Exodus. Jephthah, we put here later, we will analyze this Jephthah in the 1110 BC, and then Solomon's temple in 1970. You see that in this frame, if we put, I want to repeat this again, the Exodus in this day, we can set all the Bible chronology very well without any problem. And there is another interesting connection with this, with the 18th dynasty. Just let me mention this. We don't have the time to explain all the details. There is an article from William Shea who explained this very well. And this is what he suggests. The Exodus was here, then following this, Thutmose III died in the 1450 BC. And this is the same day of the Exodus here. It means that he was the pharaoh who died in the Exodus, in the Red Sea. And there are records that say that this pharaoh died in the Red Sea. It's very interesting, and you can visit his tomb in the Valley of the Kings near Luxor. And then we have here the whole development of the story. Amos, who was the first pharaoh after the Hyksos, they were foreigners who were ruling Egypt. But with Amos, we have the deliverer who expelled out all the Hyksos from Egypt, and he started the 18th dynasty. And then we have at Moses, later his son Amenhotep here. And then Tutmosis the first. If we have the date is right, we have here the Exodus here. How old was Moses here? 80 years. Then it brings us here to the 5th. If you rest, well, here we are at BC. We have 80 years, and we move here. Moses was born in 1530. And notice that in these days stood Moses the first, was the Pharaoh who who issued a decree to kill all the boys less than 2 years old. And it's interesting that Aaron, his son, was not there because Aaron was 3 years older. It means he was 3 years older and he was born during the days of Amenhotep. So he was not under the threat. The one who was under the threat was Moses. So to Moses the first, we have here the dates. Is the one who decreed against the Hebrew children. Later, his son Tutmosis the second, and because he was very young, he married Hatshepsut, and Hatshepsut is a quite character in the ancient Near East and in the ancient Egypt. Hatshepsut was a lady who was the wife first with Tutmosis the second and later with Tutmosis the third. And in some moment she was the ruler, and she was the one who controlled. In some moment even he dressed up as a man because she pretended to be a pharaoh. You can read, you can open, look, go for Google and Google Hatshepsut. And this powerful lady was the stepmother of Moses. She was the daughter of Tutmosis the first. That's the reason that when the Bible says that Moses was the son of the daughter of the Pharaoh, it was not any daughter, because the Pharaoh has many wives and they have many children. No, it was the daughter of Hatshepsut, this powerful lady who ruled. And then all the days of the Exodus, if we follow all of this, fits very well with this. Finally, Tutmosis the second died, and then as children came, Tutmosis the third. And when he married Hatshepsut, he was very young, but finally, when he grew up, he finally could remove Hatshepsut, and he took over the power in Egypt. He was the one who died in the Red Sea, according to the Bible. And his son Amenhotep II was the following Pharaoh. Why he didn't die? Because he was not the firstborn of Tutmosis III. And another interesting thing is that according to some records, he wasn't there during the Exodus in this year 1450. So that's the reason he died. He was doing a military campaign in Canaan. So he wasn't there. We have some records that when he came back, he found out all the mess because the Israelites left, and he took some Semitic kings from Canaan and they killed. We can interpret that there was some kind of revenge against the Israelites because they were also from the Semitic origin. So there are many details here that we cannot go in details but it's only to show that the Egyptian history fits very well with the Exodus in the 15th century. So as we say, why is important this date, the date of the Exodus? Because first, it's a confirmation that the Bible is no myth. When you start to fix all these details, you understand that Bible is history. It's connected with history. And they were real events. So based on this date, you can move back with the chronology and try to fix where is Abraham, when is Jacob, And where is Joseph? You should decide here an element if you want to go back. Is the 430 years that mention Exodus chapter 12. So how to understand this? Some scholars and the SDA Biblical Commentary, this old book, says they divide it in two sections. And they say that Jacob came to Egypt here in the middle of this year, and the persecution started with Ishmael, who persecuted Isaac. But other scholars prefer to put the 400 years here, and then Jacob came to Egypt in 1880 BC with his family when Joseph was already there. But well, this is only a quick idea. You see that it's important, the date of the Exodus. Based on the date of the Exodus, we can give all the dates. We can have a big idea about, a general idea about all the dates in the ancient Near East. That reason that this date is very important. This helps us to understand the different biblical events. And we have the idea that when God saved Israel from Egypt, my friends, in those days, Egypt was a real powerful power on earth. Was Egypt in the climax in history, the New Kingdom period, the 18 and 19 dynasties. And this was the moment that there was in the peak of the power. Thutmose, as we mentioned before, Thutmose III was one of the most powerful kings, pharaohs in Egypt. And it's amazing how God used a simple shepherd, a simple guy with only a staff in his hand, and this guy could deliver God's people in those days. It's a great motivation to know the power of our God. I add here, we won't go into details about this. I just want to show you that this period in archaeology is called the Late Bronze Age. You have here the different periods. This is in Palestine, the early bronze to early and middle, and so on. You have here, and here we have the period Later Bronze Age 1 and Later Bronze Age 2. And if you want, you can compare here with the different periods in Egypt and the different periods also in Mesopotamia. This chart helps us to try to see Israel, as we say in the beginning, Israel in the context of the day they live. They were connected with these peoples in some way. And the period that we are really interested here is only to know about Moses in these days, 1450, and later the Judges, and later the Bible, the rest, the Judges, and the first kings of Israel, and later we will show this here. So in these days, the Late Bronze Age was a change in history. There is here one interesting detail. According to archaeology, this period here, the Middle Bronze Age, was the peak of the glory of the Canaanite cities. When Canaan, according to archaeology, not to the Bible, to archaeology, there was the moment that these cities could rule. They have a lot of power and they were very rich. It's interesting that for me, it's called my attention that when God talked to Abraham, he told them, wait, in Genesis chapter 15, 16 and on, he told to Abraham, this land will be yours, but not yet. 4 generations, 400 years. When the rich of these people, the weakness of these people reach the extreme, then I will call you. And it's very interesting that those 400 years of mercy that God gave to the Canaanites were the time where Israel, where these cities was in the peak of their glory. And unfortunately, they didn't use that chance to repent, to be changed. So this is an idea, what we can find in the history. Those days here, there was a change. There was a destruction here of different periods in all the ancient Near East. And after that, we have here in Palestine, in Canaan, this period. I don't want to go to details, but I want to show you this, that you can see how archaeology, this morning we talk about archaeology, how archaeology presents those days. There was a decline in the population of Palestine those days. Why? Because there were different peoples who came here and conquered the land and destroyed the land. Among them, we can include also the Israelites. Remember the conquer of the land by Joshua? Then they brought all of this destruction. We see that archaeology considers the architecture of the findings they has, like fortifications, the town planning, the palaces, the domestic architecture, the houses, the temples, and based on this, we can have an idea how was Canaan in those days, the days of the judges, and how was the walls, the palaces, the plan of the city. There was improvement, technology was growing. In the beginning, the walls was only one wall in the cities, but later they put a double wall and with a casemate inside, with casemates, smaller stores, and then was stronger the walls. These kind of developments is what define different periods. The gate of the city, in the beginning was only a gate. Later they put 2 towers to the gate to protect the gate. Later they put 4 towers, and 1 gate and another gate and 4 towers, and then was more difficult. You see how they start to create new ways. Technology was growing. Not only on that, also in ceramics. Technology, how to do better vessels, better jars, and the colors of the jars start to improve. All these elements is what archaeology try to find, and based on that is the way they define, they can explain every period of the history. And not only architecture, pottery has very important elements. They have now a different kind of pottery. They have found pottery from Cyprus, also from Crete. And it means that there was a commercial trade among these peoples. There were connections and revealed that Canaan in those days was not only an island. There were connections with many other peoples in those days. Art, also the burial customs, how they buried the people. In the beginnings, they started to bury the people inside the city. Later, they created the idea to do it outside the city. All these elements are ways to identify what period we are talking about. With this idea, this just idea, I want to do one extra work this afternoon. And after that, I will finish. It's a chronology from Joshua to David, based on this, how to deal with these elements. So I will, please follow me carefully, because you can be lost in the road we are going to take. This is only a proposal. If you take the book of Judges and you put all the years of oppression, Judges have an oppressor, later a deliverer, the next judge, an oppression, later a leader. If you put this only online, you will have here that all the years in the Judges is 400 years and 10. But this is too much. in the Bible. If you put here, remember 40 years in the wilderness, it means they arrived in 1410 and Canaan, and 7 years of conquer the land. So they finished, they conquer in 403. So if you put here 400 years and 10, you will reach when? You will reach, please, mathematics. Pastor Yuri Girgis. He was my student. He cannot fail me now. If you put here 1403 plus 410 years, what day can we reach?
1830.
Sorry?
1830?
18. No, but it's minus.
Oh, minus.
Remember that we are BC.
Yeah, BC.
Don't forget this. We are BC here. Then it's
993.
993. Thank you. And if you see, Solomon is here. He started to be king in 1975, 74. He was king. Okay, here. David was king how many years? 40 years, according to the Bible. Then he was started to be king in 1015. And according to, we will see this later, according to the Bible, Saul, according to Acts, he was king 40 years also. We have here Saul, we are here David. Then we have Saul started to be king in 1055. But if we put here all the dates of the judges in a whole line, according to Tabarat in his book, we will hear in 1983, you see, in the days of David. So there's no, we cannot put all this in line. How to explain this in the book of Judges? How to explain all of the sequence of judges and oppressors there? Well, we can discover that in the book of Judges, there are some judges who were simultaneous, and they judge at the same time in different areas of Israel, of Canaan. When you read the book of Judges, you will realize that there's no national entity. Israel was divided in different groups, tribes, and many times the south was Judah, in the north was the other tribes, and on the other side of the Jordan River, we have another 3 tribes. And then sometimes they rule by everyone by each other. So we can say that there were some simultaneous powers, like the Bible says. Samson was ruling during the days of the Philistines. It means he was a judge, but the Philistines was the one who were ruling. Later we'll read that text. In addition, you see that the Philistine domain were simultaneous with the 18 years of the Ammonite control of Israel. It means there were 2 problems together at the same time, and they were ruling, and the judges against these people raised in the same time, the same days. It means that many of the events in the book of Judges were simultaneous, overlapping to each other, and this is what we want to show now here. Some judges were leaders in some geographical areas. Deborah, you see, when Deborah mentioned all the tribes that support them is the tribes of the north. He didn't mention Judah, he didn't mention other tribes. He mentioned the tribes, and he lived in the area of the north of Israel, the area of Galilee. And he mentioned the tribe who was there. Jephthah is in the other side of the Jordan River, the problem was with the Ammonites. Then Jephthah was judged, but in the other side, no, in Israel. Samson in the Philistines at the south. So they were not rulers like David, that was king of all Israel. So we have here these days and these elements. We have here the distribution of the different tribes. Here are the 3 Transjordan tribes: Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And here is the other half. And then Jephthah was ruling here. Judah was at the south, especially connected with Benjamin, and the rest of the tribes at the north. What later was Israel was on the north of Canaan. So this is what we understand in those days. So based on this, we can start to create a chronology based on the book of Judges. The first verse that is very important is, we read already, is the speech of Jephthah to the Ammonites. And what did he say in that speech? This land belongs us for how many years? How many years? 300 years. We have been here. Our parents have been living here for 300 years. We don't know if that day was a rounded number, maybe 290, 310. He mentioned 300, maybe it's a general number. But let's suppose that it was 300 years. More or less is no necessary. I don't pretend here that every day is the exact date. We know that can be some margin of errors, but let's take like that, and let's put here Jephthah. Is referring when they conquer, when they was reaching Canaan with Moses, they conquered the Transjordan section. And Jephthah is saying, from that moment, we have been here. If we take $300 years, we reach to 300 years here. Thank you. 1110 BC. Then we can put here Jephthah. And we can put here the moment that Jephthah fought against the Ammonites, and he defeated them, and he take the control, and he was a judge for 6 years, according to the book of Judges. But then we have some elements, and please follow me here carefully. Let's open our Bibles in Judges chapter 10. Unfortunately, we cannot go from the beginning. We should go backwards, explaining this. So you should be, and you see, my friends, the Bible has this kind of details. It's interesting, has mathematics, has this element that is invite us to think, and sometimes to have a headache, but it's very, very interesting. You see, verse 7. Judges chapter 10, verse 7. Please help me to read, because Dr. Sokupa wants the time, and I need to finish soon.
And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines, and into the hands of the children of Ammon.
You see, they fail again, and then God gives them to 2 different peoples. The Ammonites was in the Transjordan section at the north, and the Philistines was at the south, there in the south of Israel. So there are 2 peoples. And if you read, you see how many years they watch judging there. Please read Judges verse 8, the same chapter 10.
that year they vexed and oppressed the children of Israel 18 years. All the children of Israel that were on the other side of
On the other side.
in the land of the Amorites, which is in Gilead.
18 years. It means the oppression. Here we have Jephthah who fought against them. Then it means that if we go back, let's put here 18 years. The Ammonites. This brings us to what date? 1128 BC. This is the starting point of the oppression. But not only the oppression of the Ammonites, the oppression of whom also? Of the Philistines. And then please read the next. Judges chapter 13 verse 1, the story of Samson. How many years did the Philistines oppress the Israelites? 13 verse 1.
The children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years.
40 years. And remember, the oppression was started together. The Ammonites in the north and the Philistines in the south. That it means this is the starting point for the Ammonites and the same starting point for the, maybe I need a little bit of space more here later. We have here 40 years the Philistines. Then it brought us to what moment? What year? 1128 plus 40. Remember, it's minus. Would be 1088. Please follow this, because if not, later you can. You see here the control of the Ammonites and the rule of the Philistines. But this is on the north, this is in the south of Israel. What was the moment, when was the moment that the Israelites get freedom from the Philistines? 1 Samuel chapter 7 with Samuel, the judge in Ebenezer. Do you remember the story of Ebenezer? Please open there the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 7. You can read the story later carefully in your home, and you will see that this is the moment that finally the Bible said that they were delivered from the control for 40 years that the Israelites controlled them. And this is the moment that Samuel in 18 became the judge of Israel. And then it means, and later for 33 years he was ruling Israel, and finally he anointed Saul as king, and finally we have the book of Samuel and the story of Saul, David, and later on Solomon. So here we have Samuel. But let's check another interesting thing. Please, somebody read verse 2 there. 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 2. This is only chronology, my friends. Pastor, yes, you.
And it came to pass while the ark abode in
Kiriath Yearim.
that the time was long, for it was 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord.
How many years were the Ark of the Covenant in the Kiriath Yearim? 20 years. Why? Do you remember the story of the covenant, of the Ark? What happened 20 years before? 1 Samuel chapter 4.
The children of Eli decided to take the ark to the battlefield
Okay.
to have God's blessing.
And what happened?
The Philistines took the ark.
took the ark. For how long?
20 years?
No, 6 months. And then later they returned the ark.
Okay.
We don't have chance to read this. You can read 1 Samuel chapter 4. And then they returned the ark, and the ark stayed in Kiriath Harim. So, when was this event? We are talking here about chronology. When?
20 years back.
Yes, exactly, 20 years back. We have here 1088. If we go back 20 years back, we reach when?
Yeah, 1108.
1108 BC. Notice that it's interesting. Jephthah was here. The ark was conquered during the days of Jephthah. And we have Samuel here. You see that the story is not one and later the other one. No, they were living in the same time in different places, according to the Bible. Notice if you read here, you have Jephthah. Don't read now because we don't have time. Judges chapter 12, 7 to 15. We have Jephthah, who ruled 6 years. And later we have 3 judges that we don't know very well. We don't pay attention to him, fortunately. Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon. These are the years. It means they ruled for together 31 years. It means from 110, this only that you have an idea. We have Jephthah, Ibzan, Abdon, and Elon for 31 years. From 1110, then we reach when? 1079. Different judges here judging, while we have here Jephthah, we have the problems. My friend, this gives us a better picture about the book of Judges, that there were many issues going on at the same time. And it's not like that. And we can add also Judges 15:20. Judges 15:20. Now talking about Samson. Somebody please read Judges 15 verse 20.
Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines.
He ruled Israel for 20 years during the days of the Philistines. And here, remember, we have 40 years, the period of the Philistines. It means that during these 20 years, Samson was there also. Notice, there's no a specific connection of Samson, when he started to rule and when he finished to rule, when he was killed. But at least we know that in those days, notice then, these are very important days. We have Samson, we have Jephthah, we have the other judges, Ibzan, Abdon, and we have also Samuel now enrolled here, and we have Eli, the high priest. And very interesting, Eli was also a judge. Somebody can read 1 Samuel 4:18. 1 Samuel 4:18. Please, somebody help me.
And it came to pass when he made mention of the ark of God, that he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died, for he was an old man and heavy, and he had judged Israel 40 years.
He was Eli. Do you know that Eli was a judge also? Very interesting. And Samuel was another judge, the prophet, the last one. So we have another judges. The book of Judges have only 12. Well, there is some kind of artistic reason there. But Eli was also a judge. So if he was judge, when was the ark taken? When was the ark taken? We say already, my friends. When? We have here, remember, 20 years here. 11:8. That's the reason there are many days here, many connections that I know maybe we can lost. But we mentioned that here the ark was taken. So if Eli died here, when he know this, he was for 40 years. Eli was a judge. It means he started to rule when? In 1148. You see, my friends, the connections, again, all these elements together give us an idea how God ruled the days for this. This is some kind of puzzle that you should try to organize and sometimes take a little bit of our time, of our ideas. So,
Mr. Chaco.
yes, here then we have Eli, and then we have another two judges that they are known very well, Tola and Yair, in Judges chapter 10. Now we should go backwards. Sorry that we cannot start from the beginning. We should start for the moment of Jephthah. You see the date here, all the issue is here. With the date, we can do the rest. So if we go backward from the moment of the oppression, Tola and Yair, 23 years and 22 years, 45, it brings us to 11:43. We have Tola and Yair as judges. Maybe they shared in some moment with Eli, but remember that it doesn't mean that they were judges for the whole Israel. Sometimes they ruled some areas of Israel in that way. Before him, you can read Judges chapter 9. We have the son of Gideon who pretended to be a king, and he was a king for only 3 years. This is an exception in the Judges. Abimelech, that it means he ruled 3 years in Shechem. You can read chapter 9 of Judges about this story. For 3 years, 1176. And then from now, we will go backwards in the history of the book of Judges. We have Abimelech. His father ruled 40 years. When he died, Abimelech took over the control, but finally he was killed. And then 40 years, then from 1176, 40 years of Gideon. We reach 11 or 12. How long? 12, 16. He ruled for 40 years. Before Gideon, we had the Midianites. Remember the story, Judges chapter 6. He ruled, the Midianites oppressed Israel for 7 years. Then we should add here 7 years. It means we reach 1223 BC. And before then, we have the rule of Deborah and Barak in the north area of Israel. And then it means that Deborah and Barak should be here in the north area. Deborah, Barak for 40 years, they rule. It means they bring us to 1263 BC. And the Canaanite oppression before Deborah and Barak, 20 years. Okay, go back. Moving backwards, we have 1283. Here, the 20 years of oppression by Yabin, king of Hatzor, was the one there. So, if we keep going back, this is in the north of Israel. Deborah and Barak is in the north. In the south, we have Aod, Judges chapter 3. Deborah is chapter 4, and Barak. Chapter 3 of Judges is Ehud, who ruled for 80 years. From here, 80 years. This was in the south, Ehud. He was from Judah. It means he was at the south of Canaan. So it brings us to 303. It means that Ehud and Deborah and Barak were contemporaries. They ruled or they judged Israel during the same days. And the Moabite oppression before Ehud, remember, was 18 years. It brings us to 1321, 18 years. Here, I hope you are still with me. And then before him, the oppression is Othniel, the first judge of Israel, chapter 3. Is 40 years. He ruled for 40 years. Then it brings us to 1361. Here, Othniel. 40 years. And before Othniel, we have the control of Kedorlaomer, Kusan-Risataim, the king of the Mesopotamia, who controlled Israel for 8 years. Then it brings us to 369. 8 years. And this is the starting point of the Judges, the book of Judges. It means this period between the conquest until this is the time that Joshua ruled Israel, and after him, the Bible said that when he died, the elders of the days of Joshua were the one who ruled Israel in those days. And my friends, this work, you see, is very picky. We are working with numbers. We are trying to find texts here and there in order to explain this development of the chronology based on the Bible, connecting with many other elements in the Bible, and then you can use to take all of this information, give the archaeological background that we mentioned before, and besides that, you can put also the history in those days, the 18th, the 19th dynasty in Egypt, the Hittites who were ruling in those days in Turkey. We have also the Hurrians, other people who were in Mesopotamia, that maybe sometimes we forget these details. But when you study this in history and you connect the Bible with all of this, you have a better picture what was going on in those days. Thank you, my friend. God bless you.